how did it come about? How did you decide to, choose Bachelors Grove as your project?
In high school, I had a lot of fun, and I had enough credits. I could have graduated in 3 years. So my senior year, I did not necessarily put forth a lot of academic endeavors.
Right.
And I discovered I was going to West Point, and I was in a scramble to kind of catch up on math. But getting back to the historical side, we had a lot of fun, did real well junior year. And there was a social studies teacher, I believe his name was Mr. Wilkinson, and he kind of approached us and said, would you like to do some independent study work? And I said yes, and a good friend of mine, Steve Potter, he was on the football team, and another student, another friend, Dale Wirtz, and the three of us kind of worked collaboratively on independent historical research. And we did various topics, and we did it our entire senior year. And we got school credit for it, but there really wasn't a class that we went to per se. We would meet occasionally with Mr. Wilkinson and update him on what we were doing. And he encouraged us. We did turn in a paper that was, I believe, published by the Illinois State Historical Society. But it was, it was a year-long high school activity where we were doing different research on different areas. So I know the focus of this is Bachelors Grove. Yeah. We did several cleanups there. I mean, we tried to get things cleaned up. Did that once with the Boy Scouts. We had them come in and join us, and another time it was just Steve Potter, Dale Wirtz, myself, and Mr. Wilkinson might have joined us as well. But we just kind of trying to make it respectful, because it is hallowed ground. There are people buried there, and it is a place of remembrance. My father used to tell me stories that when he was a kid, that people would do picnics there. It would be a great place to go. Families would go look at the tombstones, sometimes of family members, sometimes of just other people that they knew. But it was a very pretty location, and then have their picnic and then go home.
Yeah.
So I, as a student, from my sophomore year on, was doing school articles. And one of the newspaper editors was like 3 doors down from me, and trying to make money as a sophomore, I offered, and he said sure. So I would do article. I got paid by the column inch, and did stories about sports, about school activities, and Bachelors Grove, which was part of the historical research that we were doing.
When was the last time you were in there?
The last time I was in Bachelors Grove Cemetery?
Yeah. Was it back then, or have you
No,
visited since?
I visited it once since. When I graduated, I went on to the academy. I did 5 years active duty. I was in Texas, and we've been in upstate New York ever since. So I think I came back once, and we went to the cemetery with my dad, because I said when I was a little kid, we used to go there, and he would pick mushrooms or collect mushrooms, because it's a wonderful spot. And he would tell me stories about it. And I know that he actually found an arrowhead in Bachelors Grove. He's got that.
Wow.
He will not part with it, but I know he found it there.
Can you tell us a little bit about your time there doing your research and what you do recall of what the cemetery looked like?
It was in terrible shape back then, and I know since then it's been gated at least. So that when I went back in the 80s, it had been gated. I know, is there still a pond or back there? That was a popular fishing place that people would go to sometimes. But in terms of the condition, a lot of the tombstones had been tilted or damaged, and we did not actually upright any. I mean, if there were some that were real small, we did. But for the most part, what we did is we took a lot of photographs. We did etchings trying to get the names and some of the information.
What do you recall of the stories, the legends, the neighborhood tales, the hearsay of the Grove back in those years in the early 70s when you were in high school?
Well, in the early '70s, that was regarded as a makeout spot for cars and kids and cars. And it was obvious when we did the cleanups, it was also a popular drinking spot because we're doing a lot of cleanup of beer cans and things like that. Fishing spot, daytime. I know that it's just sad, but I know when I was a kid and my dad would take me there, you know, we'd be looking for different mushrooms and stuff, that it's pretty, it is tranquil. And you can see it used to have a beauty that, you know, a cemetery deserves to have.
Right.
Did it still have its high potential of the paranormal stories back then?
The ghosts and that kind of stuff, yes, but I don't think anybody took those seriously. It was just who can make up the biggest story,
Really?
you know. Yeah, and a lot of these had to do with, you know, kids that are there and they're making out, and then somebody grabs a hand or a car to scare them.
Yeah.
And obviously that can, well, I was there, I know, something really happened, but, you know, a lot of times it was kids pranking other kids, I suspect, but I don't know.
Do you happen to remember, you had mentioned in this article, and I'm just taking by chance, maybe you might recall something about it. We've read that the Fultons partially owned the cemetery from one point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how or when that happened?
I don't, but I know that as we were looking to get it designated as a historic site, we started doing some research on that. And I remember there were a lot of legal problems associated with it, and I don't remember the details. But
Yeah. Yeah, well, it wasn't, when reading your article, at one point they never declared it officially a cemetery. And so
Really?
that was why, yeah, that's what you wrote about, that, you know, that's why it was typically thought of as non-existent, because there was no paperwork doing that. And I think that was a lot of the problem. Now, of course, then they condemned it in '77, and the county took, you know, it over.
we were doing it because it was the right thing to do.
Right.
And again, the high school independent study that we were doing, we were focusing on original historic research. And Bachelors Grove was obviously, you know, a key part of that. But when you consider that that is where people are spending their everlasting time, and the condition that was in, it just wasn't right. And that's part of the reason why I think we spent more time there than we did on some of the other activities.
Yeah, it's sad.
The large Fulton family stone, it was there when you were there in the early 70s.
Yes, isn't it still there?
Yeah,
Yes.
it is.
Do you have any idea when that was put in? The largest stone? Because we heard there is rebar going through all three pieces.
Oh, you can see rebar. There were a lot of stones that had rebar in them that people had gone back to redo.
That had gone back.
Right,
Right.
Because
They weren't original. I think they were.
right. They
Redos.
went in and they fixed them
Right.
probably.
And that was because of the vandals, that they were trying to keep them from being turned over and things like that.
But if for the Fulton stone to have this rebar in there, that probably wasn't a redo, because it is so large. Was it made that way
Don't recall.
prior or during or close to all that vandalism? Because do you remember the Shield stone? Would have been to the east, second largest stone at the time, about
Okay.
20 steps to the Fulton.
Okay.
It's almost as close as size as the Fulton, and that is put over.
Okay.
And we had read somewhere that there is rebar all the way through the base, all the way through three pieces of the Fulton stone, and we can't find out when that Fulton stone actually went in. It stands perfectly, the base is fine. The only thing is it was washed out from the water going down.
Right,
around the
right,
hill.
right. I do remember a washout by one of the stones.
You still think about the Grove when you're back at home? Is it still,
Not until I got your text, to be honest with you.
so for many years it's been pushed back and forgotten?
Well, again, it was an important, it was one of the things I did that I thought was significant when I was in high school. And once I left high school, I really haven't been, I mean, if I was back in Midlothian, I probably would have gravitated back to it. But I was in Texas for 7 years, and then I've been in upstate New York for 35 years, and I just come back occasionally. And I know once, probably in the late 80s or early 90s, I did go out there with my dad, but we couldn't get in because there was a big gate in the front on the road or something. So
Yeah.
Can't drive in there now, the path still walks in.
Okay.
3 years ago, the Forest Reserves got a federal grant. They put up some of the new fence. They
Okay.
put up a new gate. Within 2 weeks, the gate was taken down. Their hole was cut in the fence to go to the pond. Right now, they have landscapers come in
Okay.
and are still taking care of it. We go in there and clean it up and take
Yeah.
care of it and visit often.
Appreciate that.
What do you think, how do you feel, your thoughts in general of what you did that still, decades later, there are still groups trying to do the same thing you have, but we've been just roadblocked?
We did feel those roadblocks too, particularly when you talk about the legal issue, because we were trying to get things designated, and we couldn't for this and we couldn't for that, so we kept trying. And the opportunity was, if we could prove that that Revolutionary War veteran was buried there, then that would have cleared up a lot of those obstacles. But I don't recall even the name anymore. I don't.
Did you ever visited the cemetery and knew much of it before this project?
As I said, with my father. My father would go out there as a kid and collect mushrooms. He had a great book, and there was a lot of different kinds of mushrooms there. And I think we may have gone there once to collect some plants or flora or something. It was a nice spot in the.
How was your father familiar with it?
As a kid, he said that people used to go there to have picnics. On Sunday, it was a spot to go, and it was that spot between Chicago and, I think he said, Joliet, where it used to be an overnight stop, and married families and children and single women would be on one side, and then this is where Bachelors Grove is where all the single men would have to stay on that overnight stop.
That's why I
Now
asked. I
that's
wanted to hear more
interesting
on that.
because
Yeah.
we've
That's-
never heard that before.
I asked him about it, because I'm coming to the meeting, but that's basically what he said. Steve Potter and myself were the three that were doing the research, though. I do want to share any credit with them as well, because they definitely did lots of project work. And Steve Potter and Dale Wirtz also received it, but my mother hangs this proudly in the hallway.
Aw,
I want to.
that's awesome.
We'll get a picture of it at the end if that's okay.
All right.